So New York State has more Democrat voters that self-identify as democratic socialists than they have people identifying as traditional liberals. That is massive. This is the reason why Zohran has seen so much success. This is what I've been saying. I've been saying you got to meet people where they're at. We can't just disparage liberals across the board and immediately antagonize against them or present them as like enemies to our cause, because it still is a mass movement. These are winnable people. Let's start off with the New York City mayoral race before we get to the government shutdown and Trump's talks about the SNAP benefits getting killed in the next 2 days. Okay, New York City mayoral candidates are campaigning for the finish line, and the race is heating up.
Hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers have already cast their ballots with Election Day less than a week away.
It comes as new polling shows Andrew Cuomo gaining on Zohran Mamdani. Christina Fan joins us live from a polling place in Brooklyn Heights with more. Christina.
Mary and Chris, good morning. In the final week leading up to Election Day, all three candidates have their campaign schedules packed. Zohran Mamdani trying to maintain his sizable lead, while the other two candidates are still trying to catch up. Andrew Cuomo, high off a favorable shift in the polls, was on the attack Tuesday as he campaigned with Mayor Eric Adams. Both men laying in on Zohran Mamdani's leftist views.
He's a socialist who happens to be on the Democratic line. I'm a Democrat who happens to be on the independent line.
We need a Democrat. We don't need a socialist masquerading as a Democrat.
Cuomo once again criticized the assemblyman's short time in government and resume, which includes performing as the rapper Mr. Cardamom, and offered the ultimate put down from one Queens boy to another, saying Mamdani has
a cheesy smile.
Despite Cuomo's gains, Mamdani remains the clear frontrunner for City Hall, but he's refusing to get complacent. At a campaign event in Hell's Kitchen.
That was really funny. One of Cuomo's last-ditch efforts is to claim that him and Eric Adams are the real Democrats, and Zohran Mamdani is not a real Democrat. Okay? Eric Adams has no more fucks to give. I spent an eventful day in the soon-to-be former New York City mayor for Time. What did he say? In 2023, Adams hosted Mamdani and his father, a scholar of post-colonialism at Columbia University, for dinner. The frightening thing is he really believes this stuff, Adams tells me as he mixes the veggies. Globalize the intifada. There's nothing wrong with that. He believes, I don't have anything against Jews. I just don't like Israel. Well, who's in Israel, bro? At the dinner's end, Adams says he told the Mamdanis, listen, I just don't believe what you do. Mamdani has decried anti-Semitism, and recently, after a prolonged controversy, said he will discourage the use of loaded intifada phrase. Is Mamdani lived up now? No, man. No, he's not. I know a lot of people think that is the case, but I think the most consequential thing that he did, the most bad choice that he did, was to even back away from globalize the intifada. But he made that calculation in his mind. That obviously did not stop the attacks. That simply redirected the trajectory of the attacks to other stuff, right? But the ultimate goal was for him to continuously get smeared over and over again as an anti-Semite, a scary Muslim who was terrifying for the Jewish New Yorkers. But the other thing that he did was also saying that he was going to keep the New York Police Department commissioner in charge. Okay, those were I think two big concessions that he gave. By and large, I don't think New Yorkers are paying that close attention to it. But overall, I think I don't think he's betraying the cause or anything like that. Mamdani realizes that a more moderate Israel position is cleaner, more popular. No, that's not the case. See, this is why I actually hate that he's doing that, because this gives people the false assertion that moderating on Israel, as though his position is not the normal, most popular, overwhelmingly popular position. No, he's actually trying to clean up his image with the false assertion that New Yorkers won't see him as a scary Muslim terrorist guy, okay? If Zohran Mamdani was a white boy, the only line of attack that has been launched against him so far, which is that he's a scary Muslim who eats with his hands and stuff, would not work. And therefore, he would not actually have to take any concessions on this issue at all. They would probably call him a Nazi or a racist or something like that if he was a white boy, right? But we've seen how little that has, how little motion that has in Maine with Graham Plattner. If anything, people look at that and go, we love a quirked up white boy who actually, got a new tattoo over his previous Totenkopf. These are on the Republican side, especially, like, brother, these are people who call Nancy Pelosi a communist. Like, none of these words mean anything. None of these words mean anything at all. We're in a very unique moment right now. The Manhattan Institute study showed that, where is it? The Manhattan Institute study asked the survey respondents that are Democratic Party voters, which would you say describes you better? I am a traditional liberal. I am a democratic socialist. Now, obviously, this is perhaps the worst possible way to segment this out. But New York City likely voters and New York statewide voters. Okay, the right column is the New York statewide voters. For New York City voters, 53% said that they were self-IDing as a traditional liberal in the Democratic Party. Statewide, New York State voters, 49% said this. New York City-wide, I am a democratic socialist, self-identification, was at 47%. And then statewide, it was at 51%. So New York State has more Democrat voters that self-identify as democratic socialists than they do, than they have people identifying as traditional liberals. That is massive, okay? That is massive, especially considering that liberalism is hegemonic. It is the hegemonic cultural attitude. Many people who identify as traditional liberals probably aren't even traditional liberals or demand more in terms of social democratic provisions that they want from their politicians. This is the reason why Zohran has seen so much success, not because there is this socialist momentum, this genuine socialist momentum. This is something to also keep in mind. Okay? This is our opportunity in the spotlight to continue pushing. Okay? Before we get into the median voters and whatnot. But yeah, Cuomo's favorability among New York City voters is minus 20%. Okay? Minus 20%. He is so cooked. And a big part of the reason why he's cooked is because even amongst white folk broadly, he is barely defeating Zohran Mamdani. That's insane. It's the young white men that are backing the Zohran Mamdani campaign, okay? They are the backbone. Handed out over 100 DSA flyers, the libs at No Kings, New York City, and I cannot put into words how eminently winnable these people are for the left. I expect a mostly positive reception, got a universally positive reception. Anyone saying this is an anti-left thing is way out of touch. I agree. This is what I've been saying. I've been saying you got to meet people where they're at, okay? We can't just disparage liberals across the board and immediately antagonize against them or present them as like enemies to our cause, because liberalism, for whether or not we agree or whether or not we see it as a threat or not, doesn't matter. Liberalism is a mass movement. Okay? It still is a mass movement. These are winnable people. That's it. Final Quinnipiac, New York City mayoral poll by religion. None. Mamdani plus 53. Other Mamdani plus 22. Catholics, Cuomo plus 2. Protestants, Cuomo plus 8. Jews, Cuomo plus 44. I doubt it. Because when New York City Jews were polled, first of all, this disparity is so vast. This disparity is so vast in comparison to the previous performance, past performance that Zohran Mamdani had. And also, it doesn't make sense because when you ask New York Jews how they feel about Israel, and they have done that, they've directionally asked New York Jews how they feel about Israel. And the number of New York Jews, the percentage of New York Jews that say they sympathize with the Palestinians more than the Israelis is a higher percentage than this. This would imply that 72%, if Jews in New York were simply operating on Israel as their primary focus, which they are not, right? But even if that was the case, which is the least favorable interpretation of poll results, that would imply 72% of New York Jews are looking at Zohran Mamdani and thinking he's a major threat, okay? Whereas if you look at the actual polls of New York Jews, it shows that 34% of New York Jews sympathize with the Palestinians over the Israelis. And I think it's like 60+% or 60% of New York Jews sympathize with the Israelis over the Palestinians. Now, those numbers are dog shit and they're not great. Okay. This doesn't mean this is not a good number. This is not a good number for the Jewish New Yorkers. Let's be real. But that has shown me that plenty of Jewish New Yorkers are making a calculation that they are on board with Zohran, even if they like Israel, especially when looking at the performance in the primaries for Zohran Mamdani. Okay, I think people really underestimate how powerful Hasidic Jews are in New York City, especially when it comes to political power and voting. Yeah, but even the Hasidic communities in New York are overwhelmingly conservative, but there are still Hasidic Jews that are also on board with Zohran because Zohran has done like Yiddish campaign signs. He's gone to like the Satmar community. The Satmar community recently fucking came out and said, we're not going to endorse Andrew Cuomo. Like, it doesn't matter. Is it okay to be white and a viewer? Absolutely not. Yes, chatter. It's okay to be a white viewer. This community is majority white. Democrats bad, Republicans bad. Does not matter who you vote for. We need to be socialists or communists. Okay, saying that is just like pissing into the wind, okay? Please stop. Brother, Zohran is going to clear. I don't know why anyone would think Cuomo stands a chance. You cannot. You should be campaigning in the last week or so as though you are down 5 points, not up 20, okay? Yeah, the extent of which the Satmar no ball and conservative and reform leaders do not is simply remarkable. Satmar Achronim leadership not endorsing Cuomo in the race for mayor. In an open letter to their followers, the leaders highlight Mamdani's gestures in outreach and prospects of him becoming mayor. It is clear that we must not fight against him. We must not wage war with him. See? Listen, brother, you don't sit on the throne of BNH. I don't want to come across as insensitive. I think it's Satmar that owns BNH, right? My goats. You don't sit on top of the throne of BNH, the domineering force of electronic brick and mortar retail, without knowing ball. Okay? The BNH empire speaks out. I do think that a lot of the outreach that Zohran did, like the Yiddish campaigning and all this stuff, played a big role in this. Straight up. Obviously, the conservative Hasidic communities, and not just socially conservative, because all the Hasidic communities are socially conservative, but the more conservative, like super pro-Israel, MAGA voting voter block of Hasidim are not. They were never going to be on board with Zohran. So the fact that like there is any Orthodox Jewish communities in New York that are like not openly antagonistic towards him is pretty remarkable. Anyway, the likely voter count for the Quinnipiac poll was only 911. I mean, that's a decent sample size. It's not. It's just about, guys, remember, the sample size is over 500 is going to be a decent sample size, okay? It's about the weight adjustment. Like, did they go to the appropriate demographics? Yeah, the official notice from Satmar is no endorsement, but a condemnation of the smear campaign against Zohran. Official statement from the Satmar Political Committee. After much deliberation, we have decided not to endorse any candidate. However, we feel compelled to distance ourselves from the irresponsible scare campaign and incitement against Zohran Mamdani. I think this is part because of the outreach that Zohran did directly to the Hasidic communities, and also partially because of the fact that they know ball and they are weighing their options and they are seeing that Zohran is likely going to win, so they don't want to like ruffle any feathers as well. Twitter boss staying busy right now. Yeah, I know. It's insane. My whole family lives in New York City. I live in New York City and I'm def leaving. If Mamdani wins, I'm leaving New York. I think the patches are wrong, but you know, it is what it is. I guess maybe not. The patches probably aren't wrong when you think about it. Because sometimes they work they work in the exact same way. No, many of you will say, oh, it has to be IDF, but no, I think it's interchangeable. Hasids and Orthodox are widely non-Zionist, right? No, the majority of Orthodox communities are not anti-Zionist. And not all Satmar are anti-Israel, but a good amount are. Exactly. Satmar is one of the sects on the Orthodox side that is definitely more anti-Zionist than like the other Hasidic communities. Neturei Karta is all anti-Zionist, whereas a lot of the other Orthodox sects are very pro-Israel. Like I would say majority of the Orthodox community in New York especially is very conservative. They're all socially conservative, obviously, but they're also very conservative in the way that they vote. Like they make up a big chunk of the straight ticket Republican voters in New York. The most religious Jews and the least religious Jews are most likely to hate Israel, like me, Lamau. I would say that the broad majority of secular Jews are pro-Israel still. You're talking about the most like agnostic atheist Jews that don't necessarily give a shit. Because like Zionism, I feel like has become a like civic nationalist religion for a lot of Jews that are not necessarily very religious, but like still. Like they don't even keep kosher or whatever, but they still, you know, they still have a sense of community and a sense of like shared purpose that they find by defending Israel. Yeah. Majority of secular Jews are definitely not anti-Israel. Be real. Wait, what? We are way too charitable. I never said that. I said the majority of secular Jews are not anti-Israel. The majority of secular Jews are pro-Israel. Obviously, it's different when you look at when you divide by generation. I would say that the next generation of secular Jews are not pro-Israel. But the older generation of secular Jews are certainly pro-Israel. I know you do not read positive messages as such, but just wanted to let you know that even normies like me know that you're a good person. Keep up the good work. Sending Kai love as well. Thank you, chatter. I'm a secular Jew, but like all my secularly Jewish friends are one step away from calling me an anti-Semite because I'm an anti-Zionist now. Is there proof of that? Yes. There are polls. There are polls on this stuff. It's hard to get a decent understanding of it because the definition of Zionism has been purposely kept vague, right? Like, and that's why there are silly polls like 85% of Jews say Israel is important to them, you know, is important in their life. Like, okay, that's what the definition of Zionism is? That's ridiculous. Anyway. Zohran Mamdani sat down with a popular Yiddish magazine, Their Moment, for an exclusive interview on topics important to Jewish voters. Is it possible to read online? No. Bro, I genuinely cannot understand why other leftists have smoke for you or how you're perceived as not socialist/communist enough. It's okay. It's okay. They will... This comes with the territory. It is what it is. You have to be understanding of people, okay? It is what it is. Not every single person there is a clout shark, okay? Some are. Some also have different ideological tendencies. But ultimately, most people don't understand this medium that I exist in. You know, most people don't understand what this medium has, like in terms of invoking some of the most passionate haters and what kind of sophisticated smear campaigns that they run that a lot of people often get duped by. It is what it is. The only thing you can do is just keep pushing, keep pressing. I understand. I always think about the average person, right? That doesn't have time to keep up with this shit. That doesn't even have time to keep up with like politics. They're just worried about their own bread. They're worried about making ends meet. And if they're inundated with like all of this, fuck us on content, of course they're going to see me as a villain. I think people do a very successful job of presenting me as like a truly repulsive, evil figure. And given the medium that I exist in, there is plenty of opportunity to do that. Having said that, you have to keep pressing, you have to keep pushing, and you have to hope that one day people will come in open-minded when I'm, speaking on an issue that they care about and realize that they might have been duped. That is what I've always done, and that is what I will always continue to do, because I'm a very stubborn person. There are plenty of people that have probably come in here because of that, when they're like, man, everyone keeps saying this guy's a despicable and awful person. Let me go take a look for myself. And they go, okay, this wasn't real. This wasn't real at all. That's the best you can hope for. Mamdani's leading the mayoral race with 43% compared to Cuomo's 33%. Inslee was 14% per new Quinnipiac poll. Compared to the last Quinnipiac poll, Mamdani's lost 3%, while support for Cuomo and Sliwa has stayed effectively flat. Notably, the number of undecided voters has increased. Mamdani winning Staten Island by 6 and Brooklyn by only 1. Lamau, what is this poll? I mean, that's pretty crazy. What pisses me off is when leftists go on about a leftist pipeline that in the same breath shit on Hasanabi makes no sense. You can't have a pipeline without having various styles and beliefs. I know. Again, it's all right. It is what it is. Okay? It is what it is. Can't wait for you to be irrelevant. I think your life's mission will be done at that point, if that were to take place. And what would you do then? A question I ask all my haters is, what happens if I go away? What will you do with your life at that point? Like, I'm out here feeding families of haters. You have placed this level of importance upon me. You have the capacity to no longer feel that way. You can just shift your priorities to something that you consider is more consequential, more significant. What will you do? Yusuf Manayar has also noticed the same thing that I've noticed. The big uptick in Islamophobic messaging from the pro-Israel right in this moment is particularly interesting. They are absolutely petrified about softening support for Israel in right-wing Christian spaces. Their answer to this is not a pro-Israel narrative, precisely because of how toxic Israel and AIPAC are becoming, including on the right. Instead, they focus on Islamophobic narrative to try to keep the Christian right and the Zionist allied against a common enemy. This is new in right-wing spaces where previously there was not a lot of Christian skepticism over Israel, but 2 years of butchering children in Gaza seems to have changed that. Previously, in communicating to the right, Zionists used to be able to say, here's why you should love Israel. Now they just focus on, here's why you should hate Muslims. The failure to find an alternative message on both the left and the right in American politics is a sign of just how much has shifted. It's kind of hilarious because I was told about you as some kind of joke of a Muslim, but not going to lie, you kind of made me more comfortable in my faith than any other religious person out there, lol. Yeah, because I don't give a shit. I'm chill as hell when it comes to whatever people want to believe. And if a specific religious group is under attack, whether it be Jews or whether it be Muslims or there be even Christians, even though we do live in a predominantly WASP-dominated nation, so that doesn't really come up as much, I will protect those people. I abhor fundamentalism, but as far as people staying true to their faith, it's ridiculous to attack people over that. Anyway, Hassan, when I'm in your stream, you're the chillest dude. And when you on Jason's stream, as I am a Jason viewer, you bring your well-groomed dog everywhere and you're so chill and nonchalant, but TikTok makes you look crazy. Yeah, it is what it is. I think my job here is to show that juxtaposition, to show how wrong that is when people do tune in. And if they catch me in a bad moment when I'm like screaming, I think that doesn't help. But yeah, clip culture is poison. And it's ironic because I think like even the Phase Boys are currently going through the motions of clip culture because swaths of fandom can completely dominate. Swaths of fandom can completely dominate discourse. They can just like make it seem as though people are shitting on one another when they're not, right? And because a lot of people are susceptible to their audience's opinions, they feel like they have to respond in the way that their audiences would like it. It's ironic because a lot of people say I'm audience captured, and yet I yell at my audience all the time, like non-stop, which is hilarious because then those clips go viral and they say Hassan yells at his audience all the time. I've never been audience captured. I always yell at my audience. I always whip them into shape. And that's precisely the reason why no one is in here giving me grief about collabing with FaZe or whoever the I collab with. Because if they were to do that, I would tell them to shut the up. You know? Dare them to watch during a Platinum segment? I know. What about addressing the community concerns for marginalized people? Well, that's a little bit different, right? Being audience captured is one thing. Deciding to make sure that we do a little bit of cleanup in the opposite direction is another. Just because I'm not going to immediately cut aside understandable concerns that people have in this community doesn't mean I'm always going to baby them. That's not me babying them at all. It's important to also take accountability. You know? Let's continue.
Tuesday, he focused again on a key issue of his campaign, affordability.
For many New Yorkers, especially those, the 1 in 4 that are living in poverty, this status quo is untenable. What we can't afford is allowing this to continue.
Voter enthusiasm in the race remains high. More than 297,000 New Yorkers cast their ballots in the first 4 days of early voting, and it shows no sign.
Mate, stop finding excuses for yourself is pathetic. You really do great stuff. It's okay to self-reflect when you find yourself under the banner of pushing the needle. Find yourself defending baby killers under the banner of pushing the needle. See, this is what I mean. This is a great example of not being audience captured. Because whenever someone comes in here and presents something that I'm not doing because they misunderstood my point, I just tell them to shut the up. That's it.
Signs of abating. Republican Curtis Lewa, consistently trailing third in the polls, said the turnout in the race so far is a good thing.
This is a candidacy that represents people, whether they vote for me or not. I say again and again, it's the people who will pick the next mayor. I trust the people to vote.
And as an indication of just how enthusiastic voters have been, a Board of Elections map showed that 2 polling locations had wait times between 20 to 50 minutes, and another 3 polling locations had wait times of more than 50 minutes.
It's crazy.
Reporting live from Brooklyn Heights, Christina Fan, CBS News,
That's
New York.
crazy.
Christina, thank you.
So early voting is in full swing as New York City is set to elect its next mayor, and new data shows a record number of people, more than 200,000, casting their ballots so far.
Democrat Zohran Mamdani still seen as the front runner despite lukewarm support.
God damn, CNN still got some
In
dog
his
shit
own
audio.
party.
How is that
We have
possible?
CNN chief data analyst Harry Enton with us now. All right, Harry, put the turnout into context for us historically.
Yeah, I'll note a historic little anecdote, which was my mother voted early. If my mother's voting early, you can vote early too here in New York City. But let's take a look here at the numbers, what we're looking at so far. You know, in 2025,
Holy
we're looking
Toledo.
at, look at this, already north of 220,000. The entire 2021 campaign only had 170,000 people turn out early, and we're only 3 days into this thing. I think we might be looking at the highest turnout in the New York City mayoral election since at least 2001, which of course was a close affair between Mark Green, the Democrat, and the Republican Mike Bloomberg. And you might have to go all the way back to 1993, when of course David Dinkins, the incumbent mayor, was defeated by Rudy Giuliani, the Republican.
Harry, who do you imagine is benefiting from this high early turnout?
1993.
Oh, Boris, that is the question, isn't it? And if I was a magical person, I could tell you for sure which candidate it was.
Person.
I am a magical person, but not in that way. I'm a magical person in the way that I'm able to look at the camera, and a magical person insofar as my personality is absolutely fantastic. But actually telling you who it's necessarily benefiting, I'm not quite sure I can do that for you. I think there's good signs for both the candidates. Why don't we start off with a good sign for Mamdani? All right, New York City general election early voter turnout. The top increase in the boroughs versus 2021 is Brooklyn. That is where we expect and where the polling really does suggest that Mamdani is going to do quite well. He did quite well during the primary there. That is also obviously where there are a lot of folks who might agree with Mamdani's further left politics than Andrew Cuomo might necessarily have. So Brooklyn being high in the turnout, that's good for Zohran Mamdani. Now, if you're looking for a good sign for Andrew Cuomo, why don't you look at the turnout by age group? All right, this is 2025 New York City, and the largest early voting age group. In the primary, it was younger voters, those aged 30 to 30.
I'm witnessing more and more people are just obsessed with Zohran like an attractive celebrity. They are willingly ignoring his backtracking on progressive positions like Palestine liberation. Only time will tell. Only time will tell. Only time will tell. Okay? That's it. That's all. Don't worry about it. If you're out, you're out. Okay? If you're out, you're out. That's all I got to say. Because I don't think he is backtracked. I think he's tried to retriangulate his message, and at times he's actually stepped on landmines for no reason. But I do find it pretty crazy that people are looking at his candidacy as he is under an unimaginable amount, a metric ton of Islamophobic hatred that they are trying to repackage as like a anti-Semitic, like a wave of anti-Semitism, as they tried to like hit Zohran on this issue because he's Muslim, and then make it seem as though this is what the voters are actually fearful of, and present that as like an Israel issue. People on the left sometimes find themselves thinking, no, there is a reason for it. There's a reason for it, and that's because he's betraying his anti-Zionist roots or something.
That was the top group in terms of turnout in the early vote. Now look at this side of the screen. Look at what we have here in the general election so far.
I hate the Dem voter base. The candidates always need to be the absolute best and check off every single box. Is so annoying. That's not even true. I think the Democratic voter base is a lot more forgiving of blemishes on people's track records nowadays than ever before, especially if they present a left flank position. Whereas the arguments that we're having currently is amongst the left, people to the left of Zohran Mamdani. And I would go so far as to say that the only the Dem base do not have these kinds of considerations for white people. It is very clear. Okay? They do not have these kinds of considerations for white people. The only reason why this is even a point of concern or a point of contention is because Zohran is brown. Okay? Not that it matters. You have to work on it. You have to do your very best to present your policies in spite of everything else. And Zohran Mamdani knows that. But that's it. This is something that I have talked about quite a bit. You have a much tougher go at it if you're not a white dude. That's it. That doesn't mean it's unwinnable. It just means it's harder for you. You have to be extra careful. You can't have any deal breakers, right? Zohran doesn't have any deal breakers. And yet, regardless of that, his background is the only weapon that the right forces can currently wield against him. And they're doing so. That's what they're doing.
It's actually early voters who are making up the larger share of the early vote so far. 65 to 69 is the largest group. That, of course, is a group that Andrew Cuomo is expected to do very well amongst. He's expected to do poor among younger voters. So the fact that older voters are turning out to vote so far, that is a good sign for Andrew Cuomo. I won't tell you, though, which age bracket my mother belongs to, because I'm very young. She could be very young, too.
Yeah, very young. Magically.
Yeah, here. So Michael Lang had an assessment. Zohran Mamdani will win the general election, but winning is not enough. He needs a majority, 50+% of the vote. A symbolic statement of broad support spanning all of New York City's 350 neighborhoods. Here is Mamdani's path to a mandate. Get it? Mandate. Because Mamdani. Okay, sorry. Let's move on. I present to you the Commie Corridor Senior, the Commie Corridor Junior, Open Doors, the Capitalist Corridor, No King's Marchers, MSNBC Viewers, the Black Belt, the Anti-Commie Corridor, the Forgotten People, Archie Bunker's Descendants, and Swing States. Okay? These are all of the New York City's 365 neighborhoods sorted into 11 categories. The Commie Corridor Senior, the young leftist base that has reshaped New York City politics over the past decade. The Commie Corridor Junior, the next era of socialist electoral expansion. Open Doors, working class South Asian and Muslim communities, where Mamdani's opened the doors for the left. The Capitalist Corridor, the wealthiest blocks of Manhattan. The No King's Marchers, the progressive middle-aged and older voters in brownstone neighborhoods that broke overwhelmingly for Lander and Mamdani. The MSNBC Viewers, liberals who split their votes between Mamdani and Cuomo and Lander in the primary. the Black Belt, the most staunchly pro-Democrat neighborhoods in the United States of America, the anti-commie corridor, heavily Republican communities with large ancestral Eastern European populations, Orthodox, Sephardic, Hasidic, Russian, and Ukrainian, the forgotten people, lower income black and Hispanic precincts where the Democratic Party is losing support, the swing states, neighborhoods where the margin was close between Andrew Cuomo and Zohran Mamdani in the Democratic primary and Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in the presidential election, and Archie Bunker's descendants, the dwindling pro-Trump white ethnics that once anchored New York City's electorate. Okay, that's a very funny, in my opinion, it was a very funny way to dive into this. The commie corridor, the young leftist base, went for Harris by 83, Trump by 17% in the general, and the 2025 primary went for Mamdani by 66%, Cuomo for 14%, and Lander for 12%. Since the Democratic primary, the commie corridor, which, by the way, is Astoria, Long Island City, Greenpoint, Williamsburg, Fort Greene, Bushwick, and Bed-Stuy. Since the Dem primary, the commie corridor, the phrase I coined to describe Mamdani's left-leaning and youthful base, has taken a life of his own, headlining a New York Times op-ed featuring a primetime CNN segment, receiving citation in the New Yorker, and even a Wikipedia blurb. On June 24th, this ideological cohort, stretching from Astoria to Sunset Park, powered the Democratic Socialist Mamdani to victory with a record turnout and resounding margins. But can the new shorthand for the urban left keep up this raucous energy in November? After all, the youth are notoriously fickle, at least according to their baby boomer parents. Young people thus far have made up a smaller percentage of the electorate than in the Democratic primary, according to the data released by the Board of Elections, leaving some to question whether the Mamdani mania has worn off. I don't think so. Okay? I think there is no indication that it has worn off. That's not how these things work. If anything, there's even more momentum in the general. Okay? That's number one. Number two, Michael from Pennsylvania actually had a good assessment on this, and it's actually becoming clearer and clearer that he was right about this. He said that early voting usually tends to favor, in the first couple of days, the older demographic of voters, and then throughout the early voting, according to previous patterns, it starts moving in the direction of younger voters. Okay? And it seems he was right about this because younger voters are now increasing their turnout in the last couple of days. Obviously, there's still time. We shall see. But in a bitterly contested and higher turnout general election, the commie corridor will have less influence than a closed Democratic primary. Mamdani did an excellent job of maximizing his base, but how many more untapped voters are there left? The electorate estimation is 14 to 18%. Zohran needs to win almost 80% of the vote. 75% is pretty good, too. What type of early voting has occurred so far? Aren't younger people more likely to go in person? I'm 21 and I went in person to vote last year. Mike was panicking today on stream that you mentioned him and you'll get him arrested, and now you're mentioning him again. Yeah. If I'm going to prison, that's going to prison too, okay? Sorry. Sucks to suck. Sucks to suck, Michael. The Commie Corridor Jr., the next era of progressive and socialist electoral expansion, is Bay Ridge, East Village, Hamilton Heights, Harlem, Hell's Kitchen, Kensington, Lower East Side. Harris by 79%, Trump by 21%. What happened in the general? In the 2025 primary, Mamdani got 52%, Cuomo got 28%, and Lander got 11%. Nonetheless, Mamdani's dominance in June was not confined to the neighborhoods where the socialist left had already established an electoral foothold. In expanding the political map, Mamdani broadened the left's horizons, coalescing previously unrealized gains, creating a new electorate with a mass politics campaign, and providing a winning template for future candidates of his mold. For youth and leftism is not confined to the shores of Long Island City and Greenpoint. Zohran needs to win 2/3 of the vote here. Throughout the hip and happening blocks of the East Village, Alphabet City, and the Lower East Side, Mamdani routinely eclipsed 80% of the vote. Across bustling Hell's Kitchen and gentrifying Hamilton Heights, the charismatic insurgents seldom lost a precinct. Ditto for Central Harlem, historically the black political capital of the world, where Mamdani trounced Cuomo by more than 20%. In Bay Ridge, a diversifying middle-class community at the end of the R train, Cuomo won 5 precincts. Mamdani won the other 35. None of these neighborhoods, where the Democratic Socialists won handily, have any DSA elected officials. The South Asian and Muslim communities, obviously Mamdani did a pretty decent job. This is where the unks and aunties come into play. 55% is pretty good because remember, regardless of the South Asian and Muslim communities where Zohran is supposed to do fairly well because he is representative, even this breakdown shows you that there are plenty of unks and aunties that have reactionary perspectives. That's precisely the reason why Harris, who also came from this background as well, still did relatively poorly as opposed to all these other places, right? Harris got 61%, Trump got 39%. Mamdani got 55%, Cuomo got 36%. Mamdani's victory was not solely a triumph of the commie corridor, but underrepresented and often overlooked New Yorkers, Muslims, South Asians, rent-stabilized tenants. Now they are fulcrum of the biggest political story in the country, with cable news pundits and national magazines have been forced to learn the plight of South Richmond Hill, Jamaica, and Westchester Square. A new story bringing visibility to the lives of those often too ignored, written before our eyes. 1 year ago, these working class communities were the epicenter of the Democratic Party's failure, lost to the couch, a writing ballot, or Donald Trump himself. In the wake of Trump's victory, Mamdani's breakout moment as a candidate for mayor came from talking to the voters on Hillside Avenue in Queens, a Bangladeshi corridor that saw one of the nation's most pronounced shifts to the right. This was the start of an unprecedented level of outreach to South Asian and Muslim voters. This is where representation also plays a big role here. Okay? When people say, imagine being a Muslim and voting for Cuomo despite what he constantly says about them, you have to understand, you have to unlock a part of your brain that causes you to have a hemorrhage. Okay? If you want to understand the mindset of the median voter, you have to literally bludgeon yourself with a frying pan over and over again until you have lost object permanence. I cannot stress this enough. Okay? If you think these unks and aunties are tuned in to this election and literally hearing everything that Andrew Cuomo is saying about them, about Muslims in general, or even internalizing what Andrew Cuomo is saying or what Donald Trump was saying, for example, you're wrong. Most voters are vibes-based voters, okay? Remember, Latinos, Latino men in particular, specifically, voted for Trump, okay? Why did they do this? Why did they do this? Well, for a million different reasons. I've obviously relitigated this over and over again. I'm not going to get into it, but that should show you, okay? Most voters are basically barely existing, okay? They're barely surviving off of paint chips that they eat every single day. That's how you have to think about it. Most people are oblivious. That's why canvassing until the very last moment matters. Why does it matter? Because a lot more people than you think are tuning into this race. This community is the worst place to understand the mindset of the average voter. Why do I say this? Because this community was aware of Zohran when he was polling at 5%. I interviewed Zohran when he was at 5%, chat, in a crowded primary field with 16 other candidates. Do you think the average voter had heard of Zohran Mamdani? Even the average progressive voter had not heard of Zohran Mamdani at that point. Many of you encountered Zohran Mamdani for the first time in that exciting one-on-one media opportunity. We are not normal. We are not normal. We are abnormal, okay? We are abnormal. You have to remember that. At any moment, if you think the average voter is even remotely as tuned into whatever the going on in any number of different races all around the country as you are, or as we are in this community, you are wrong. You will find yourself in the throes of delusion. Okay? This is also the reason why I always say you got to dial it back when you're talking about certain issues, when you're talking about certain things, or when you disparage candidates immediately if they like marginally change their position in the direction of like the median voter somehow. Okay? Yeah, there are multiple canvassers of Zohran saying they still barely knew who he was, and they're just tuning into all this now. Of course. Of course. Even when you have 100,000 door knockers, like Zohran does, 50,000 in the primary, which was an impressive number, 100,000 in the general, which is unimaginable, right? For a mayoral race, there are still going to be plenty of people who are oblivious. Okay? That's it. I still remember when he was sub 10% of my group in Grand Army Plaza were Chapo Trap House fans, Gramlow fans, and Hasanabi heads. Yep. Once I'm done with this video, I'm going to get into the mindset of a median voter so you understand.
Young, even. Right? So, see what I did there? Okay, Mamdani, though, he's still the favorite?
Yeah, I think so. You know, you can see it in the prediction markets right here at this particular point. What do we see? The top chances to win New York City mayor, according to the Cal.
I cannot tell you how much I despise the fact that CNN and all these other outlets unironically refer to the prediction betting markets, which are incredibly susceptible to market intervention. By I can't believe it. This doesn't show anything, please.
Your prediction market odds. Look, Mamdani has an 86% chance. Andrew Cuomo comes in at 14%. I will say Cuomo's up a little bit from where he was yesterday, but the bottom line at this particular point is Zohran Mamdani is driving the subway car. He's driving the bus. He's not driving the car because, of course, most people in New York City actually commute via mass transit or by walking. They don't drive their cars. So at this particular point, Mamdani is the favorite. Andrew Cuomo's got a shot, perhaps a little bit up from where he was just a few days ago. But at this point, Zohran Mamdani is in the driver's seat, guys.
A magical and...
We're now just one.
Okay. Further consolidation could help close the gap between Mamdani and Cuomo, says Steve Kornacki, who has been relatively disappointing thus far. Zohran was on TMR this morning. Where? When was he on the Majority Report? Oh, there he is. Interview with Zohran Mamdani. We'll take a look at this in a little bit. There was a tweet sourcing Atrioc as a source for how Gen Z feels about politics. Lamont per Atrioc was crazy to read. I thought that was wrong. I thought they meant Axios. I think they falsely attributed an Axios report to Atrioc. Anyway. Where was I? Oh, let's look at the mindset of the median voter now that we covered some of the patterns in New York. We compiled profiles of American voters and asked people who they think each voted for in the 2024 election. What do you think James voted for? Okay. And the American Survey Center from the American Enterprise Institute. How did Americans vote for in 2024? A lot of you say, I don't game, and you're wrong. Show personal views. Favors allowing gay and lesbian couples to marry legally. Opposes government offering parents vouchers to send their children to private or religious schools or to a public charter school of their choice. Thinks abortion should be illegal in most cases. Okay. Who do you think he voted for? Who do you think James voted for? I'm going to say Donald Trump. He's not my favorite person, and I don't believe he's even a great choice for a presidential candidate, but he was significantly better than Kamala Harris. I could never vote for someone who believes in killing unborn babies. Samantha, black female, age 30. Favors the government offering parents vouchers to send their children. I mean, this is Kamala Harris. Thinks too many people are easily offended these days because of the language others use. I voted for Kamala Harris because of her economic policies and plans to support working voters. Yeah. Sarah, AAPI, female. Favors making it more difficult to access pornography on the internet. Oop. Favors tougher laws and regulations to protect the environment, even if it raises prices or costs and jobs. Thinks abortion, Kamala Harris. Oh, did not vote. Damn. Wrong. Joe, Hispanic male, 33. Opposes allowing gay and lesbian couples to marry legally. Favors making use of marijuana legal. Opposes deporting all immigrants who are living in the U.S. illegally back to their home country. I think I would have said Joe, Hispanic male. Wait, what? Opposes allowing gay and... Wait, what? Opposes allowing gay and lesbian couples to marry legally. Favors making the use of marijuana legal. Opposes deporting all immigrants who are living in the U.S. illegally back to their home country. That's not Kamala Harris. That's a did not vote, right? I mean, demographic-wise, this is a lock for Donald Trump. But then this is Donald Trump's signature policy. So I'm going to go with Donald Trump. Yep, he's not a politician, but a good businessman. Come on. Come on. Come on. Chatters, have you forgotten? Did we forget? Lest you forget. That's right. That's right. These are my Hispanics over there. They love me. They say, yo voy a votar por Donald Trump. And I love it. I love it. You already know what it is. Anyway, let's keep going. Monica, black female, 43, opposes tougher laws and regulations to protect the environment, even if it raises prices or costs jobs. Thinks abortion should be legal in most cases. Kamala Harris. Thinks the government today cannot afford to do much to help the needy. Yeah. She was working for the middle class America. She's not rich, and she set out to protect people like me to help build a better future for families. When people are bigots, their bigotry wins over any other social or economic beliefs they have. Wrong. Here's why that's wrong. Are you ready for this? Bigotry is a very important tool in the tool belt of the reactionary, but it's only an important tool in the tool belt of the reactionary if the opposition, in this case, the Democratic Party, is not actually pushing for a comprehensive and, dare I say, radical agenda for economic prosperity. Okay? That's it. Because even a racist person is like, well, I need housing. You know, even a racist person thinks, well, I need health care. If one side was just saying, we're going to give everybody housing, we're going to give everybody health care. It doesn't matter if you're a racist, doesn't matter if you're a black person, doesn't matter if you're a trans person. Okay? That's how you could captivate. That's how you could captivate the largest group of voters. Okay? That's it. That's it. People, in many circumstances, turned around and voted for Trump because, you know, they had racist predispositions, but Donald Trump used the economic situation to his advantage to farm the malleable racist masses to think that it was the undocumented Guatemalan that was responsible for the economic hardships that they were experiencing. Okay? That is the major responsibility. That is the major responsibility of the Democratic Party, the major failure of the Democratic Party. Demi Charm says, no, voters don't want black people to get anything, so they vote against free programs. This is not wrong. You are not wrong at all. You are absolutely correct. Lee Atwater agrees with you. Okay? The difference is, however, the solution, rather, to this argument is universality. Okay? Means-tested policies that the Democrats present oftentimes end up disproportionately targeting black people, and that's how you get the dumb hicks who hate black people to say, oh, well, if they cut welfare, they're hurting black people, so I'll vote for that. But if this wasn't means-tested, if this was a universal program, then they would go, you know, I hate black people, but also I kind of want a house, you know? So that's it. Means-tested programs create enmity for no reason. Okay? That's it. That's why you got to say, no, everybody gets health care, even racist people. Okay? There's a saying in the South that I'm fond of: a white man will shit his pants if he thinks a black man will have to smell it. Fair, but you can overcome that, is my point. Anyway. Continue to perpetuate hate and include your racist asses in the downturn. You suck. Wait, what? I think a lot of people fail to consider this is not a one-stop perfect solution. Like, racism is still going to exist. You can clearly point to like rich people whose material problems have been solved, and yet they still want to be racist, right? But the goal here is to make it so that the underlying material harms that create volatility, they create instability, they create enmity are solved. So it's much harder for people to become the well-read and financially successful racists. That is the goal. Okay? Because ultimately, white supremacy is a tool of the capitalists. And the weapon that they wield towards victims of white supremacy is still class warfare. Okay? Is there such a thing as well-read races? Yes, of course. Like wealthy, well-read people can be objectively racist. I mean, look at J.D. Vance. He went to like some of the top institutions in the country. Look at Ben Shapiro. Look at Tucker Carlson. There are a lot of people like that. Anyway, Michael is 24-year-old black male, opposes allowing gay and lesbian couples to marry, opposes tougher laws and regulations to protect the environment, even if it raises price or cost jobs. Thinks too many people are easily offended these. Oh, this is Donald Trump voter. I'm black and it don't matter anyway. They do what they want. When it comes to my race in America, we have no choice. God damn. I thought this would be, I was wrong. Anna, white female 26, Trump. Actually, I don't know. We'll see. Favors making it more difficult to access pornography on the internet. Favors tougher laws and regulation to protect the environment, even if it raises prices or cost jobs. Thinks too many people are easily offended these days over the language that others use. Donald Trump. I voted for him because I didn't think Kamala should have been included in the race. She wasn't in it from the beginning. She was thrown in the last minute when Biden decided to step down. She wasn't the people's choice from the start. Sam, white male 34, favors allowing gay and lesbian couples to marry legally. Thinks abortion should be legal in most cases. Thinks too many people are easily offended these days. Kamala Harris. I did not like either candidate, but Trump was a huge concern for me and my beliefs so far during his second term. The worries I had about him have been correct. Andrew, white male 38, favors making the use of marijuana legal. Thinks abortion should be legal in most cases. Thinks too many people are easily offended these days over the language that others use. Donald Trump. Now you might be thinking to yourself, why did these two people come up side by side? There's a little bit metagaming here, okay? But I knew I knew just off vibes alone that Sam was a ultra lib and Andrew, on the other hand, was right wing. Now this is randomized, but how did I clock it? The order is random. I know. I just luckily had these two people with the same exact opinions. One voting for Kamala Harris, one voting for Donald Trump. The thing is, this not only speaks to the mindset of the median voter, but this also speaks to the lack of issue-specific messaging on both sides of the fucking aisle, especially on the Democratic Party side. Do you understand? That is the reason why someone can be like, I want legal marijuana and I think Trump will do it. Or I want abortion should be legal in most cases and I don't think Trump is anti-abortion. Yeah, we taught this chimpanzee to understand the median voter's politics and he hanged himself. Daniel, black male 31, favors making it more difficult to access pornography on the internet. Favors deporting all immigrants who are living in... By the way, this one sucks because this doesn't mean anything. As a matter of fact, many of these don't mean anything. Especially because the reflection or the weight that people place on these opinions is wrong. And also, the assessment that they're making on which candidate favors these policy provisions over the next is also wrong. That's why it's meaningless. Do you understand? And Daniel is lying about porn. Favors deporting all immigrants who are living in the U.S. illegally back to their home country. Thinks abortion should be legal in most cases. Donald Trump. The economy and immigration were my reasons for voting for Donald Trump. Easy. John, white male 30, opposes making it more difficult to access pornography on the internet. Favors allowing gay and lesbian couples to marry legally. Favors deporting all immigrants who are living in the U.S. illegally back to their home country. Thinks abortion should be illegal in most cases. That's Donald Trump voter. This is a crazy one because he's a gooner. He's a gooner who wants gay and lesbians to marry, but wants mass deportation and wants abortion to be illegal. Yeah. He's not a career politician. He's a successful businessman. The country should be run like a business. Easy lock. Dumbest guy out there. I hate that argument. Jessica, white female 32. Opposes deporting all immigrants who are living in the U.S. illegally back to their home country. Thinks abortion should be legal in most cases. Thinks the government should do more to help needy. Oh, Kamala Harris. I didn't have increasingly strong feelings about her as a candidate, but for me, the very real and dangerous cons of Donald Trump being president outweighed any other factor. Isabella, Hispanic, female 33. Opposes allowing gay and lesbian couples to marry. So anti-gay and lesbian marriage. Favors mass deportation. Isabella, who is Hispanic herself. Thinks abortion should be legal in most cases. This is a tricky one. Demographically speaking, this could go either way, but weighs in Trump's favor to a certain degree. Okay? The abortion one is not a goner for Trump, though. That's the point. Like, clearly, if I'm gonna go crazy with it, I'm gonna say did not vote. It was Trump. Most important reason is because immigrants coming to America getting all the help, and others that have been here never got nothing. Antonio, Hispanic male, 45, opposes the government offering parents vouchers to send their children to private or religious schools, opposes deporting all immigrants living in the U.S. illegally, thinks the government should do more to help. Oh, Kamala Harris. What? I voted Trump out of support for Israel in the Second Amendment? Antonio, what the heliante? Are you... What? I'm done. I'm done. It's over. I'm done. Wrap it up. Wrap it up. Wrap it up. Is this Antonio Brown? Pump fake so hard, I'm literally in orbit. Okay? I'm on a spaceship. I'm on a spaceship, dude. I'm actually out of orbit. I told you Antonio would brick you. Incredible country. You fell for the Wemby pump fake? Brother, this is... I mean, he pumped it so hard. Can you even call this a pump fake? This is like, you need to study this man's mind. You need to capture Antonio and just relinquish control to the medical community. Because I don't understand how you have these opinions and then go, well, guess what? Donald Trump is strong for Israel. I got CTE from his CTE-induced conditions. Sadie, white female, 25. Favors allowing gay and lesbian couples to marry legally. Favors tougher laws and regulations to protect the environment, even if it raises the price of cost of jobs. Thinks abortion should be legal in most cases. Kamala Harris, or did not vote. What? America needs a change for the better of our economy. I cannot afford to live. I'm tired of financially struggling no matter what we do. What the hell? Oh my God. Sophia, I'm done. I'm done. That's 3 L's in a row. I'm done. How is this possible? Sophia opposes allowing anti-gay marriage, opposes anti-mass deportation, thinks people need to be more careful about the language they use to avoid offending people. Okay, dude. I mean, this is ridiculous. It also has to be Kamala Harris, but it's a pump fake, and it's actually going to be Donald Trump again, right? Or didn't vote. Yeah, there it is. I didn't believe either candidate was right for the job, and I didn't feel putting my name behind either one of them. God damn, dude. I got 5 wrong. You correctly guessed 11 out of 16. Yeah, no, this is real. This is real. This is real. Antonio is a USA pilled Latino. They want to assimilate. Like that doesn't hurt their people. Yeah. I want to tie this to the Vox article that came out about this pack that I've been meaning to talk about, the Welcome Pack, and how much they're pumping this shit. Eric Levitz wrote about it. The Democratic Party has spent most of the past decade deciding to lose, or so argues a new report from Welcome Pack, an organization that backs center-left candidates so as to build a big tent Democratic Party. Democrats literally looked to their electoral defeats over the last decade and said, we got to go back to the drawing board. Okay? And guess what they found? Lo and behold, this might come as a surprise to you, but it turns out what the Democrats hadn't done was be centrist enough. Okay? That's what it was, guys. Since Bill Clinton, we got to get more centrist. It turns out that was the problem with Kamala Harris. Now, the annoying part about this is that there are 2 truths and a lie hidden, because I read the outline of this report, okay? And at first I thought to myself, okay, there's some reasonable takes in here, like focusing on affordability. But it turns out the Democratic hucksters and tricksters were simply just saying, oh, focus on affordability, but also say, fuck trans people on the side. Come on, man. Because there's 2 problems here that they do not understand, okay? There's 2 things that you are supposed to be constantly paying attention to if you are in either major party. There is the leading by example and messaging in a direction where you can swing the electorate back to your side. And then there is there's obviously the easy gimmies that you can get. Now, the easy gimmies that you can get are left populist economic positions that center around universality. Okay? That's how you bring the broadest base of support back to your side. The problem is these guys are not leaning heavily enough in that on that stuff, because this is, once again, a lot of consultant speak to tell Democrats what they have been doing already, which is, rest assured, when we say affordability, we mean like marginally advancing the cause of expanding the affordability of healthcare, right? Like nothing that is decipherable, nothing that is definable, nothing that is broad-based support for Medicare for all, for example. Okay? It is ironic that this welcome pack report basically says Kamala Harris actually did a banger job and still lost. In general, macroeconomic management, while very important to incumbent party success, is just a legitimately pretty hard problem that lots of reasonable people end up disagreeing about. Much harder problem than figuring out whether unpopular stances on, e.g. crime, hurt electorally. If forced to choose between adopting economic policies that poll well and those most likely to actually work, Democrats should ignore the polls, says Simon Bazelon, the leading author of The Deciding to Win. Isn't there a tension between delivering the electorate's preferred outcomes and appealing to its policy instincts? For example, tariffs often polled well before Trump actually implemented them. Yet when his tariff raised prices, voters turned against them. So what should Democrats do when the imperatives of good governance and electoral expedience come into conflict? Basically, this report says having a left populist position on economics is like having broad-based support for left populist policies. And I can't believe they're using tariffs as an example here, because tariffs is the stupidest example, right? But let's not use tariffs as an example. Let's use Medicare for all as an example, because this report is antagonistic to Medicare for all. Okay? Because Medicare for all is unfortunately a mover and shaker that would cause mass disruptions in the American economy, Democrats will never get on board with it because they're, one, terrified of what that would do in the interim while being implemented, and two, they're terrified of what their corporate donors would say and do. Okay? They are worried about the money faucet running out. Private healthcare in this country is a massive, massive sector. It has ballooned our GDP, as you have seen over and over again. I've talked about it, right? It is an unnecessary middleman that literally does not need to exist at all. And at best, it should be a marginal factor, right? Heavily regulated if it exists at all. And yet, these guys don't want anybody to even broach that subject matter. And I always say to Democrats that will listen, that if you don't have an understandable, easily digestible, easily definable message on this issue that so many Americans are frustrated by, Medicare for all, or universal health care, whatever you want to call it, single payer, whatever, okay, then you're going to lose. Democrats need to understand that this is both good politics and good policy, okay? It's good policy because it helps people. It's good governance because it dramatically restructures the healthcare system here in this country for the betterment of all Americans. It's good politics because it's something that Americans broadly want, okay? The eradication of medical debt, which is non-existent in many other comparable OECD nations, is a major burden lifted off the shoulders of the American working class. And it's also less costly to the Americans anyway. By and large, the overwhelming majority of Americans under a single payer program would pay far less in taxes as they currently do in insurance premiums. And yet, for some weird reason, everyone seems to turn a blind eye to this reality. Okay? Can you name a policy that's good but not... Can you name good policy that's not good politics? Sure. Let me think. What's an example of a good policy that's not good politics as it stands currently? universal housing, gun control, significant gun control, universal housing, reparations. That's another good one. There are plenty of examples. There are plenty of examples of good policy that's not, for the time being, good politics. Okay? Safe injection sites. That's another good one. Right? No private schools. That's another good one. Expanded public transit is good politics and good policy. You're wrong about that. Yeah. This is how the New York Times described a conference hosted by the group who wrote the report. They self-identify as an anti-populist, anti-left. Is their whole deal. And it's extremely bad faith and insulting to everyone's intelligence to act like they are anything but this. At CPAC of the center, Democratic moderates beat up on the left. At a wonky gathering in Washington, centrist Democrats argued that they were the majority makers. The party needed to take control of Congress in 2026 and beyond. It does not suggest... Here, Matt Iglesias. The essay argues that Democrats should, 1, pay less attention to their donors' demands from left-wing policy on climate and social issues, 2, raise tax on the rich to expand the welfare state, and the left populists hate it. This is Matt Iglesias and Adam Johnson duking it out over this report that came out. Okay? I don't know why these people don't understand that you can de-emphasize social issues without turning your back on social issues. You can run an economics-focused campaign without sacrificing social issues. It's just a matter of what you prioritize. Exactly. That is always my argument and will always be my argument. Your front-facing approach should be universal programs that seek to eliminate the harm that as many Americans as possible are experiencing. Because trans people are not magical, mystical beings that do not actually suffer under market conditions. Black people are not magical, mystical beings that don't have to care about the cost of rent increasing, right? And neither are racist white folk, okay? They're not. They need these problems solved too. So your front-facing approach should be solving these economic issues with universal programs. And then once you bring those people on under your umbrella, then you tell them, yeah, we're not compromising on this shit. Like, you want healthcare? Great. Trans people are going to get it too. You want healthcare? Great. Black people are going to get it too. Will there still be people that say, you know what? I don't want healthcare if it means black people are getting it? Of course there will be. There are a lot of stupid people out there. There are a lot of racist people out there, but that doesn't mean you don't need those people to win an election, is my point. As opposed to what the Democrats are doing right now, which is not running with universality as a first principle, not running with like broad sweeping reforms, radical changes that will restructure the American economy in the direction of solving some of the harm that Americans are broadly experiencing, regardless of their color, creed, background, ethnicity, religious identity, whatever, right? Bernie had a big issue with black people because he didn't do that. I don't know how many times we have to relitigate this, but Bernie Sanders on the vibes front had a hard time reaching black people, okay? He did. But the reality of the matter is it wasn't because he was refusing to push for policies. It was because he was getting an endless faucet from the Democrat turnout machine, an endless faucet of smears presenting the guy who literally did go out and get arrested during the civil rights struggle, okay, for black people not, I think it was about housing, right, during the civil rights movement. He didn't explain it well to the local communities. I don't think it was necessarily, I mean, it was definitely a fault ultimately of the campaign, for sure. But I think we have to dramatically take a look at the ways in which the establishment media machine and the Democratic voter turnout machine actively said that Bernie Sanders was not trustworthy. The reality of the matter is that plays a big role. Don't do that, Hassan. That's a white take. He did that civil rights march 100 years ago. No, here's the problem, okay? I'm not using that as the primary reason to say Bernie Sanders is on board with the current existing black struggle in the United States of America. I'm saying that voters are very malleable, right? And voters are very malleable in the sense that they can overlook establishment Democrat failures and then hyper scrutinize candidates, left flank candidates that are considered bad. Okay? That's what I'm saying. Like, because like Hillary Clinton, do we actually think Hillary Clinton is pro-black people? Like, I don't think any of us in this community feel that way, right? And yet, black people certainly thought so. And there's got to be a reason for that. And I think that reason was because the media machine and the turnout machine actively suppressed the negative associations with Hillary Clinton and black people in her background. If they were to have turned the scrutiny machine in Hillary Clinton's direction, I think a lot of people would have probably focused on the economic solutions. This dude is his own biggest enemy. He communicates in such a way, an ass way is so easy to clip him. He's the most clippable man on this planet. Wait, what do you mean? I'm saying I don't think Hillary Clinton gave a fuck about black people. She didn't. She had a lot, and neither did Joe Biden, but there was already a lot of existing charitability from black voters for both of these candidates. They were known and recognizable establishment Democrat candidates. That's it. That's it. I wasn't using this as an example for, Bernie Sanders' phenomenal work as far as like, black liberation goes, and then how little black people cared about him and how dare they, how dare they attack him or whatever. I'm not doing that. I'm not saying that at all, because I think ultimately it still is dependent on the campaign. And the campaign objectively failed in reaching a large number of especially older black voters, because Bernie was actually cleaning with younger black voters in all of the primaries. But when it came to the heart of the turnout machine for the Democrats, older black voting blocks, they went with overwhelming numbers to the establishment pick. We must take a cold, hard look at why that happened. Because as far as like vibes goes, yeah, Bernie's vibes probably remind a lot of older black folk of like a elderly white curmudgeon, and that he did not have enough charitability in these voting blocks. He just didn't. And I think a big part of the reason was electability. The electability argument is a very strong argument, because black voters, by and large, especially older black voters that still have respect for the Democratic Party, because they can remember a time when the Democrats actually ate up political and social capital in defense of black people's right to be able to vote or desegregation, right? They recognize that both parties are comprised of racists. It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. That's the calculation in many circumstances. Okay? That's the calculation. It's not like black voters don't know that Hillary Clinton or even Bill Clinton is not Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton were racist. They know that. They know that both parties have candidates that are genuinely, or at least to a certain degree, exhibiting white supremacist tendencies. It's more so about harm reduction narratives, which work. My boomer parents are like this, very risk-averse politically despite progressive beliefs. Yeah. I'm willing to bet there are even plenty of people across the board on the MSNBC watching constituency that probably like what Bernie Sanders was saying, but thought, well, people don't want to vote for that. People are not progressive enough, because that's all they saw on their television sets. You feel me? That's it. My people are not used to expecting good things. Yeah, there is that as well. That nihilistic tendency that many voters already have. In any case, I can't believe we got here. We were talking about something else. Take this excerpt from the article, then compare it to the median voters in the game you just played. Does this jive? I think both Biden in 2020 and Harris in 2024 showed us that voters are evaluating candidates in large parts on their record over a period of several years, not just 3 months before the election. Yeah, that does make sense. Anyway, there are 3 different versions of make the rich people pay higher tax on the list of good popular policies. What's important is that this specific things candidates do and don't embrace, not what elite-focused factional label they put on it. Adam Johnson had a lot of choice words for this article when it first came out. He said, oh, wow, another billionaire funded data guy who's come to the conclusion that the problem with the Dems is that they're too far left. which worked out well for his billionaire donors because it would have been super awkward for them if the data showed left populism was the answer. He directly tackles the people that were responsible for this report here by saying, this thread, somewhat cravenly even for this genre, blames nominal support for Medicare for all among Dems as damaging the Dem brand, which is objectively nuts, but expected when you're funded by a Walton Hare, a Murdoch Hare, guy who visited the Jeffrey Epstein Island, and Bain Capital executives. There's about 9,000 of these soul-searching astroturf projects right now, as I wrote about last month. Another one is Abundists. Okay? These guys love writing. These guys, These guys love writing about how the best possible thing to do for the Democratic Party is to stay the course on third-way neoliberalism, but simply restructure the way you're messaging third-way neoliberalism. Okay? That's it. And the way that Matt Iglesias and his contingency in the consultancy class has realized the way that they can tackle the third-way neoliberalism issue, which dictates that you don't actually offer people radical changes at a time when they're very clearly demanding it. What's more radical than Donald Trump? Like, they were so stupid enough to believe that Donald Trump would actually present this radical change, right? Are actually demanding reasonable centrism on the economic front, and also a complete abandonment of social issues. The problem is, when you do that, you are always going to lose with the Republicans, because the Republicans can always turn around and still present you as being woke as pay less attention to the donors' demands for left-wing policy on climate and social issues, raise taxes on the rich to expand the welfare state, and left populace hates it. If you want to go further on left economics than DTW argues, that's fine. But the logic of that is you need to go even further right on other issues, but it's impossible to get people on either side of this debate to own up to any of the trade-offs. It does not suggest meaningfully expanding the welfare state, and no one reading it would think this. It degrades and asks push-pull questions against Medicare for all, free college, and universal child care while paying lip service to modest tax increases and expanding healthcare access, which is true. Okay? That is precisely what this report did. When they ask people about Medicare for all, they falsely claim that Medicare for all would increase your taxes by 20%. Okay? That's what this PAC, this new PAC, presented. And then they turned around and said, see, people don't want Medicare for all, which is an incorrect assessment of what Medicare for all does. Medicare for all, at the end of the day, would cause people to pay less overall. It would be a substitute where you actually pay a higher percentage of taxes, but pay far less in premiums and get health care for free at the point of care. You would pay less in taxes than you do in premiums. That's it. And yet, they never presented as such. Hassan Reaction is one of the best ones in the React channel.